Welcome back. Noon hour, the Connor Happer Show. You're on 1620 The Zone and on 1620thezone.com. Connor Happer, Josh Odson with you. Let's head to summer school here. The Michigan Wolverines, a largely frustrating and disappointing season last year. 6-5 going into the game. And then you know what happened. A win there, and then a win against Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl, and maybe things felt a little bit different going into the offseason. Some satisfaction at the end for Michigan last year. Aaron McMann, MLive.com, joins us now on the Prairie Flower Casino Zone Hotline. Aaron, good afternoon. Thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm good. Good afternoon. It's good to be with you.
So just gave you the preamble there. How satisfying was the end of last season for Michigan fans, even in a season in which more was expected?
Yeah, no, they needed it. I mean, given the way the season went, I mean, they were 4-3, 5-4 at one point, and things didn't look too great. They barely been able to beat their state rival Michigan State. They struggled through the Big Ten slate. And then, as you pointed out, they rattle off 3 straight wins that close the year. They blow out Northwestern, and perhaps the most shocking of all, they beat Ohio State in a game I didn't think they stood a chance in. And then they go and beat basically a full-strength Alabama team in the bowl game. And if you go back and look at Michigan's roster for that one, they played a lot of backups, a lot of guys that were second stringers. So that was shocking in and of itself as well. So they gave them some momentum going into the offseason, which is a good thing. And I think it was a reminder to those players that did play in that bowl game that they were better than what the record indicated.
There's quite a bit back. Defense is projected to be really, really good, but the primary question I think on most of the onlookers' minds is what does Bryce Underwood give them? How good is he? Can he elevate Michigan offensively this year in a season which last year, I mean, you compare it to last year, they kind of were doing it without a quarterback for basically the majority of the season last year. What's the expectation for him, and how good can it be in year one for him, assuming he's the starter?
Yeah, I mean, whoever Michigan throws out their quarterback, I think is going to be an upgrade over what they had last year. And that's not necessarily knocking the guys that were on the team last year. They weren't very good. They weren't up to the snuff. They weren't, even mid-level quality Big Ten caliber quarterback. Underwood, look, he was a 5-star freshman. He's got a lot of upside. They like a lot of things about him. If he does end up being the guy, I mean, look, it's going to provide a lot of excitement. It's clear to me just in the few months he's been in the program and talking to players and coaches and the folks inside, he's certainly won over the locker room already. The players seem to respect him. Some of the older leaders like what they've seen out of him, just his maturity, the way he goes about his business. He doesn't say much. He just kind of goes out there and does, and he's learning too. That's the thing too. They keep harping on. He's only 17 years old. In fact, I think he turns 18 at some point this month. So he's a young kid. There's gonna be a learning growth. There's gonna be a lot of development to be had. But I think if he ends up being the guy, I think you're gonna see a Michigan offense that looks, and runs, operates a little bit better than they did last year. And I think by and large, that I think should help elevate Michigan as a team this fall.
Would you expect him to be the guy, or how deep does this battle with Mikey Keene go?
It's a good question. If you had asked me this question before spring practice, I would have told you I would have leaned Keene just based off of experience. He was a 2-year starter at Fresno State. He's made like 35 starts his college career. It would make sense. You get the veteran guy coming in and just kind of hand over the ropes eventually. But Keene was injured in the spring, didn't practice, and kind of fell behind the 8 ball here. And by default, Bryce Underwood took basically half the snaps in spring practice. So I think he got more of a running start than anyone would have expected. And I think in a way that kind of gave him the upper hand at this point. So I think Bryce Underwood is the front runner here in camp at quarterback. From my understanding, he's taking first team reps. So I think it's likely he gets a start. I'm not going to rule out him getting the job just based off of experience. Right now, given everything that all the talk about Underwood, the hype, the money, everything, it's set up for him to, I think, be the starter week 1.
Well, there's some precedent here too. Could you see a world where they, are sharing snaps even into the season?
That's possible, especially if Bryce struggles. You have to remember too, Michigan week 2 has to go to Oklahoma. That's not going to be easy at all. Going on the road for your second start, in a hostile SEC environment. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do some sort of deal where both guys take snaps at some point, especially if Bryce does struggle. They do a bit better and they can throw in there and feel comfortable with playing with. So I do think Skeen will see some snaps this year. It's just a matter of when and how they come about. But and look, Michigan's done this before. It was kind of flipped a few years ago. Their beginning of their Big Ten run in 2021. Kane McNamara was a starter at that point. J.J. McCarthy was the backup. 2 freshmen, a lot of hype around him. Same thing, 5-star recruit. He didn't start, but he was getting snaps as the season went on. They were finding roles to get situations in the game, get him into the game, and get his feet wet, so to speak. So Michigan certainly has used 2 quarterbacks in the past. It wouldn't surprise me if they do that this fall.
There's some turnover up front on defense with the guys that were lost last year with Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, who were both incredible guys up front for Michigan and kept them in a lot of games, honestly. So there's some turnover there, but they were able to go out and get some guys from high-profile programs to replenish the stock there. How good does it look up front? Would you consider it to be unproven, talented? Like, what's the ceiling for that group?
Well, they're deep. They're a lot deeper than they were last year. This time last year, they knew they had Mason Graham, they had Kenneth Grant, a pair of who ended up being first round NFL draft picks. They knew they had those guys, but the expectation going into the season was they were going to play 40, 45, 50 snaps a game. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. Michigan just didn't have a lot behind them. So they had to ride those guys pretty much all of last year, and it worked out because they had one of the best run defenses in the country. This year it's a little different, right? They don't have the high-level talent. They don't have the bona fide first-round picks. But they've got a lot of guys who have played football and they're comfortable with and they like. So, the coaches have been talking, they to the centers they can rotate in there as games and situations wear on. So I think you're going to see up front, not only interior at the tackles, but on the edges as well. You're going to see really, like 10 to 12 guys rotating in and out throughout the game to keep those bodies fresh and kind of give the opposing offenses different looks. It's very reminiscent of what Michigan did in their 2023 season when they won the national championship. They had 4 really guys they thought could start at the edge, and they had a mix of 3 to 4 tackles they felt comfortable for in the game. So I think they're going to do that this year. They brought in a couple of tackle, Trey Williams from Clemson, Damon Payne from Alabama. Rayshon Benny's back. He was a backup last year who kind of, as the season wore on, became kind of a third starter in the middle. So they feel good about the depth up front. And while that top line talent may not be there, they feel like they've got enough bodies to make up for it.
Second level there on that defense. Around here, there's a guy familiar, Ernest Hausman, who played his first year at Nebraska and is from Columbus. Seems like he's taking a real, leadership role and being right in the middle of that defense. How solid has he been, and what's the expectation for him this year?
Yeah, he's really fit in. He came in a couple of years ago and he kind of rode the pine, so to speak. I know he played a lot in Nebraska his first year. I think probably internally he expected to come to Michigan and play a lot as well. Didn't really do that. He's more of a backup rotational guy. But as of the last couple of years, he's really worked his way in, obviously into the rotation. He started last year. He's and become a leader, a well-respected locker room guy. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he's named captain this fall. That's why he's well respected there. So he's really fit into the Michigan culture, the scheme, and how they want to play. I expect him to see a lot of him on the field this fall and disrupting games. So no, he's been a great addition. Michigan's really loving what they got out of him.
How much energy? I guess this is sort of like you can't really tell, but it's more of a feel thing from what you get in the program. Mm-hmm. How much emphasis goes into week number 2 at Oklahoma, an SEC road game? And if I read this right, the first true SEC road game in program history. Which is sort of absurd. But obviously Sherrone Moore going back to his alma mater, it feels like there's a lot there, and it's a big game, and it's 2 big helmets. How much goes into that one for Michigan?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. It wouldn't surprise me if they are preparing for that game. That's not necessarily knock on New Mexico's their opener at the end of the year. But look, you're right. It's a road game in an SEC environment against a high level team who I expect to really compete in the SEC this year. They brought in a good quarterback. They brought in a new coordinator. Their defense is always solid, and as we were talking about, it could potentially be Bryce Underwood's second start under center. That's not easy for a true freshman. So I got to imagine they're preparing for that right now, and along with all these storylines you just mentioned, right? That Sherrone Moore used to play there, graduated from there. I grew up when he was a young lad there in Oklahoma, so it means a lot to him as well. And look, it's going to mean a lot for the program. I think we're going to learn a lot about this Michigan team week 2 of how good they are, how good the defense is. Is Bryce Underwood or whoever starts at quarterback the real deal? It's going to become a barometer, good barometer of this Michigan football program 2 games in.
What kind of impact can the Sherrone Moore suspension have in the weeks that he is not there, which will include the trip to Nebraska?
Yeah, it could certainly impact it. My expectation too is he wouldn't be able to practice or participate in practice all week either, which would be a big deal from a preparation standpoint. Because a couple of years ago, when Jim Harbaugh got suspended by Michigan for the recruiting violations, he was able to still participate in practice during the week and the build up and the lead up and everything else. So in a way, it kind of became a well-oiled machine by the time Saturday rolled around. So I think it will make a difference. Him not having him on the sideline will obviously be obvious. Players will probably miss him. At the same token, Michigan's got some experience on their staff, guys who have head coaching experience, in the past. Biff Poggi, former head coach at Charlotte, who got let go last year. Chip Lindsey, the new offensive coordinator, was a head coach at Troy a few years back. So I wouldn't be surprised if Don Week Martindale would throw his name in the hat to be a head coach. So there's guys who I think would be able to do just fine in the role. Because at the end of the day, Michigan's kind of got their coordinators who kind of run the show. And then the head coach, in this case, Sherrone, a couple years ago, Jim Harbaugh, was just kind of making sure things ran smoothly. It's a good question. Given the game in the Big Ten, it would be a big deal. Maybe it makes a difference. I don't know. But it's certainly going to be a storyline if and when he is suspended.
So we don't know who takes that title in the weeks he's gone?
We don't know yet. In fact, we asked Sherrone a few weeks back in Las Vegas, Big Ten Media Days, and he said he's got a plan. He hasn't revealed it just yet, and he seemed to suggest maybe he won't have to roll the plan out at all. So maybe he's hoping he doesn't get suspended, but we'll see. We're still waiting on the NCAA to rule.
Interesting. So last question for you, and thanks for doing this, Aaron, again. Is the expectation to go to the playoff this year for Michigan?
I would say so. They're kind of on the fringe. The preseason win total for them is 8.5. I think a 9-3 year probably gets them in. How top heavy the Big Ten is and has been. But yeah, I think that's a good goal to shoot for. Last year they were in Sherrone's first year. They were talking about beating the rivals, which they did. They beat Ohio State and Michigan State and winning championships, and they weren't able to do that. They weren't even close in the Big Ten, as you guys know, and they weren't even close to getting into the playoffs. So I think that's a fair goal to shoot for this year. If you can beat your rivals, position yourself to win 9 or 10 games, given the nature of the 12-team deal, it certainly, I think, would get them in. So yeah, that's realistic at this point. The Big Ten so much where it's difficult now, and I think it's a necessarily shoot for a conference championship. It's nice, it's an added benefit and everything else. And as we know, it's not required to play for a national championship. As we saw last year, Ohio State did not win the Big Ten, and they're still able to get in the playoffs and run the table.
Aaron McMann, MLive.com. Aaron, we always appreciate you dropping by. Thanks for giving us the preview, and maybe we'll be talking again in a little more than a month.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Aaron McMann, MLive.com. Gosh, that's a fascinating team this year. They were number 10 in Bill Connolly's SP Plus preseason.
Whoa.
Which I felt like was a little aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess I just kind of assumed that Underwood, I knew that they brought in another guy too. So the other guy is from Fresno State, who had played a few years there. And so I knew that they had brought him in, but I don't know how long. I don't know if it's a sham, right? Like if it's a sham competition.
Okay.
But I kind of just assumed that it'd be Bryce Underwood all the way. They'd hand over the reins to him, and like he said, the money and all that stuff that's a factor.
But I look at this schedule.
It's a little light. It's a little light. So the Oklahoma game,
even the pitfalls are like not even.
That Oklahoma thing is significant.
That's a real battle.
The fact that they get them in week 2, and Oklahoma really cares deeply about its non-conference games as well, and the helmet thing and the Sherrone Moore thing and just all of it. Going on the road, couldn't believe that stat. First true road game in an SEC school ever for Michigan. Shame on them. But
Cowardice.
yeah, you're staying in their own world. But
They got to go at USC, at their rival Michigan State.
Are they 2-1 or are they 3-0 going into Lincoln?
Yeah.
I could see it really either way. That's a big game for both of those teams, that Oklahoma game. And then of course there's the Nebraska game.
Oklahoma needs that game, right? Like,
yeah, you
got to get the fans back on your side.
Jump back in a little bit. Yeah. But in conference, of course, they get Ohio State at the end of the year. They miss Oregon. They miss Penn State this year. They get a trip to USC.
I mean, they even miss Iowa.
They miss Iowa. They get a trip to USC, tricky, and a trip to up the road to East Lansing. But other than that, it's pretty cake. They were one of the teams that popped up when we did the schedule kind of research a couple weeks ago, Josh. They were one of the teams like, whoa, they play Purdue, they play Maryland, They play those bottom two teams in the league in only one of the top tier, which in my opinion is made up of Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. And they only play one of them, and it's at the end of the year. And and everyone says that's a drop all the records game anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Throw the records out the window, that type of thing. I don't know. Watch that Michigan State game too in late October.
Yeah.
I kind of got this weird Michigan State kind of tingle right now.
I was just about to say there's a few people that are saying like, hey, watch out for the Spartans.
I got a weird Michigan State tingle.
Poll question.
I don't know how to explain it. I know people are going to vote no to that poll question, but yeah, put it out there. Do you have a weird Michigan State tingle right now, or just period?
Okay.
Question mark. Last year, Michigan blasted by Texas, beat USC close. Remember they stole that game against Minnesota because there was that whole onside kick thing at the end.
Oh yeah, I do remember that now.
Stole that game. Lost to Washington on the road, lost to Illinois, lost to Indiana, lost to Oregon, and then everything changed at the end of the year. They were 5-5 going into the Northwestern game, beat the living hell out of them, beat Ohio State, and then beat Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
You did your, I don't know, preamble for the interview and kind of recapped Michigan's season last year.
Yeah.
Didn't remember their record going into Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
pretty
knew
funny, isn't it?
I knew they didn't make the playoff, but I don't remember the bad times.
Josh, do you remember what happened in that Ohio State game?
I do.
Interesting. Maybe I could get some sound and we could make people hear it.
Warren looking, and it's intercepted at the goal line. Unbelievable! Wow, Jack Sawyer, the hero, Captain Jack.
Wow. That's the one that gets me every time. Wow.
And then there was pepper spray.
And then there was just a light smattering of pepper spray. Kenneth writes in on YouTube.
Hi, Kenneth.
Michigan being bad forever wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. In fact, some may say that it would be a good thing.
Notre Dame honk thinks Michigan being bad is good.
Kenneth, I'm on team Michigan hater too.
Yeah.
I can't stand those guys. But we must play it neutral when we're talking to the people from Michigan.
That's right.
You tell them you're a hater, and then all of a sudden the interview becomes contentious.
Yeah, it does change.
It changes things. Or we bring on people who hate the school that they cover. Have we made contact with our boy?
I reached out yesterday. Like I haven't gotten in touch with Scott Wolf. He will not return my texts.
The USC guy who famously hates everything.
Reached out via email. Got a reply.
So we're making some headway here.
Major progress has been made in getting Scott Wolf back on the show.
We need it.
Now, everybody be cool. Nobody tell him what's happening.
I'm just going to tee him up. I mean, he's not going to notice. I'm just going to tee him up.
He'll be happy we teed him up instead of the same old.
It was just an incredible revelation during that thing last year. Because we asked him a couple questions and he was all pissed off. And I was like, hey,
I'm just going to go for it.
I was like, hey, what do you think of Lincoln Riley, by the way? He's just like, Uh-oh, what's going on? What?
At 12:23, I received an email to my inbox
From
from
Scott.
Scott Wolf.
Hello.
Quote, yes, that should work.
Yes. So
One
when should we expect
week
this?
from today.
Oh my God.
Scott Wolf on the big show.
Whew. Here we go.
That's right.
Black Cat, get ready.
Good get, Josh.
Please vote on the poll question at Happer Show. Do you have a weird Michigan State tingle? So please vote. We need your votes.
I agree with you. I'm glad we asked it, but yeah, you're not going to get the votes you want here.
We'll take a break. Another guest coming up on the other side.
Oh, who could this be?
It's Michael Brunt.
Oh,
I wonder what he thinks about Michigan.
good question. I'll bet nobody asked him that.
Wonder what he thinks about the A's. I don't think he probably cares anymore.
Nah, it is what it is.
Bruntz joins next on 1620 The Zone.